Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vinny Brusco Show.
And here we go.
I can't hear you. Hold on.
What about now?
There you go.
All right.
You got a nice little setup there, buddy.
Hey, man, it's just a house. I'm coming for that next. Once I get everything situated, bro, that's coming next, man.
I like that setup, man. You're in Miami, right?
Yeah, South Florida, Miami, sunny hours, baby. Where you at?
I'm in Westchester, New York.
Oh, man, I see the hoodie.
You can see my.
I'll be shirtless right now, man. It's
Listen,
so hot.
go for it. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. You can see my breath if you look closely enough. It's free. It's
crazy.
Usually, I'll get, if I know I'm doing a podcast, I'll get out here in the morning and I have like two little space heaters, right, and I'll turn them on. But I didn't get a chance to do that today. And right now, I feel like I'm in a cabin and I should be ice fishing. Like there should be a hole in the middle of this shed.
What's the temperature?
Right now, if I had a spitball, let's see, 27.
We don't get that here. The cool thing is, in about 3 to 4 months, me and the fam, we're going to be moving to New Jersey. So I'm about to be experiencing that, man.
Why are you moving to New Jersey?
My Queen's family is all up there. She's been here. She moved from Jersey down here to be with me for about, 5 to 6 years. So now it's like time to reciprocate that.
Okay.
And locate a little bit. So
yeah.
Here we go, bro. Seasons.
Listen,
I get no seasons here.
So I go back and forth with something like that. Like sometimes I'm like, all right, I can go with no seasons because I'm all about shorts and flip flops. But there's definitely something about there being, cold air during Christmas. Like right now, Christmas, New Year's over. Like give me 85 degrees in shorts and flip flops. Like I'm over it now.
But like to give you that holiday feeling, like temperature wise, I get it.
Yeah, like there's something about putting up your lights and your hands just like shivering,
We don't get that, man. We out there basically butt naked, lights hanging up, ladder, flip flops, like you said, bro. And I'm telling you, the only seasons that we get here that I like to joke around with is hot and rain. Those are our 2 seasons, bro.
Yeah, I've been down to Miami, and even the rain in Florida in general is like 10, 15 minutes of just downpour, and that's like, oh, the sun's out again.
And it can literally be raining in one block. I call my friends on the next block, and it's sunshine over there. So, like, we legit have, like, that bipolar weather and everything here, man.
Yeah, it's definitely cold, and I'm ready. I'm like I said, once New Year's over, I'm like, just give me the heat. I'm over it.
Yeah, I'm just mentally preparing for it, bro. Mentally, because it's coming soon, man.
Well, when you come up to Jersey, you could stop by the pod shed and we could do this in person.
I got to, bro.
I'd be happy to have you. So. Talk to me about Cosmic Byron. How did that second self come about?
Actually, not even second self. I'm gonna say like 30th self. Bro. It's just been like one after another. But why I like to do that, the main reason I love to identify, like for instance, you and I, let's say we go like 2 years without talking, right? And I see you somewhere and you're like, Cosmic Byron. Instantly, I know that there was a moment in my time and space how that Cosmic Byron generated, how that Cosmic Byron operated, how he thought, his perspectives on the world. So I look at it like as a timestamp. So when other individuals call me, like there was one time I was going by Deshaun, which is my middle name, there's different areas of my life. They're kind of like tattoos. Like once you get a tattoo, it's a timestamp in which what you were experiencing during that moment of time and space. So like that's how I look at like the identity aspect, because it's ever evolving.
Do you have a duration in mind? Do you run Cosmic Byron for 5 years, or you just?
It's a sensation. Like literally, it just bubbles up. I'm like, oh shit, okay, boom, let's go with quantum or enigmatic, something like that. Like just something random. It hits. I surrender to it, and I just keep moving.
Is that something that comes up to you like in a meditation? Do you focus on kind of shifting gears with that consciously and saying like, I'm going to step into this new version of myself? And what does that entail?
Like I used to go that direction, but now it's more so of when source when I receive a download from source, I legit just surrender to that concept. So it's no more of me like focusing in on a particular aspect. It's more so of in that space, I'm surrendered and I allow that download to literally just pour into. From there, I go back once I meditate, I come back home from the beach, I sit down and I annotate exactly what I experienced doing that, like from emotions to sensations to tingles and chakra, energy centers, just everything that I experienced in that particular meditation. And then I began to translate what those sensations were attempting, or my perspective of what those sensations were trying to communicate. And from there, that's when like I take the bits and pieces and real world apply it in an application format to my life. You know?
Meditating at the beach definitely has a different feeling to it.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of meditating on the beach a couple of times in Jersey, actually, waking up early, hitting the beach, doing my yoga, meditating, jumping into the cold ocean. But at the beach, there's something about it that whether it be just the air, the beach air has a certain resonance to it alone, or being so close to the ocean, but meditating at the beach definitely adds a certain element to meditating.
Shoes and socks off, toes in the sand.
That's it, man.
Man, it's that connective element. Like, like from a scientific standpoint, how there is a theory in which like we originate from the ocean, like that concept. Like I don't commit to any one belief, but like I can see like bits and pieces, some scientific evidence that make sense. So like there are elements to where like I look at the beach as returning home.
Sure.
Like you come from a long trip someday and you just want to come home and lay in your bed and you feel like literally at peace and you just knock out, like that state of serenity. That's how I feel every morning when I wake up and go to the beach. It's like I return home. I surrender in that moment, like those sensations, that energy, that the from the sand in my feet to the sand in my palms, to the air, to the ocean waves, like all those different elements mixing and fusing into one, man, like it's legitimately orgasmic, bro.
Yeah. Do you find that in other, modalities of nature? Like if you go out in the woods or, if you're in another form of nature, would you find that same type of connection, or is it specifically the beach?
That's what I have to tap into, because like, for instance, when we've been visiting Jersey and, like it's the mountains and it's the woods out there. So like I've done the meditation, but like I go with that level of expectancy, and that's what I need to work on, because here I am like already with that level of expectancy, like, oh man, this shit not gonna compare to the ocean, blah, blah, blah. So I start to dilute and like unpurify like that whole aspect of what that element could be. And another thing I need to do, I need to like take these damn shoes off next time. My next visit, which is probably like in a couple of weeks, I need to take these shoes off and just like go like barefoot and just like connect, hug trees, like all that weird shit, And just really immerse into that experience.
There are times, even now, which we're in obviously January, I'll walk out to whether it be take out the garbage or run to do something, and I'll just go out and I won't put on shoes just for the sheer sake of just feeling the cold concrete or the cold grass. It's very different than the beach, but I'll definitely make it a point. I'm like, no, I'm not wearing shoes to go outside right now. Like I need to feel it.
It's funny because like my wife, she's completely different. Like for instance, my 3-year-old, I'll go outside, we'll go walk the dog. I'm like, you don't need shoes. Mommy said we need shoes. Mommy said we need shoes. So I'm like, Queen, come on. You're not going to get in trouble this time. I won't tell mommy, blah, blah, blah. Just for her to get like practice with those elements. So it's funny, like watching her, like the dynamics switch up, and now she goes to walk the dog with my wife, and it's more so, Mommy, I don't want to wear shoes.
Right.
Why don't you want to wear shoes? I want to feel the earth. So it's like funny to watch like those downloads transition into like the mind of and consciousness of a 3-year-old,
Yeah, my daughter's 5, my son is 1.5, and I referenced those experiences with them quite often. And I remember, and I've spoke about this before, but I remember when she first discovered ants, and she was marveled at them, and she looked up at me and she was just like, looking at me like, what the fuck are these things, And I think that's one of the joys of the experience that we have is seeing the world again through child's eyes, because we lose that, after the age of 7, we leave that theta brainwave state, and we get all the external influences that create our different personalities and create us and mold us. but in that window of time where you're just pure, consciously unconscious, right? It's wonderful, and to see the wonder in all of it.
Totally, man. Like you mentioned ants just the other day, like this was her first. She loves ants, bro. Like I'm talking like crawling all on her. But of course, they were black ants. So this is her first encounter with red ants. I'm sitting, like we like to go like see the sharks in the backyard, whatever, right? And for some reason this time there was a pile of red ants. So she goes and like she's accustomed to and acclimated with adjusting and playing with black ants. This time she stuck her hand. Luckily, it wasn't a bunch of them, but the red ants got on like her hand, and she got her first bite. So I got to experience, like she immediately went to go kill it. So of course, like I let her feel the pain, of course, and like go through the emotions of what she was experiencing. But I just tried to show her like this is not meant for you to like develop a sense of fear around nature, right? So this is just to understand and understand nature and understand that this is just an extension of you. We treat it with respect. Let's not try to kill it. Next time we just come with more wisdom and we'll apply it next time. So now when she sees them, she'd like to just look at them. And I'm like, thank goodness, man. Because I'm that type of child where it takes like a couple times for me to like not touch the hot stove again. I would have got like bit like 20 times, but luckily she got it on the first time. And it's just cool to watch like her so consciously like evolved into like what I'm like explaining to her about ants and the differences between the black and the red ants and all that different stuff. So it's pretty cool. Like as soon as you said ants, man, like instantly.
I saw you smile. I saw you like light up, because I know that. And we had an ant farm. She, she's into ants. But I remember that first time specifically, and the wonder in her eye, and it resonates with me. It just sits somewhere, and it's one of those moments that, whether it be your whole life flashes before you on your deathbed, that will definitely be one of them that will stand out as a snapshot. So what made you shift into this conscious being, just kind of journeying through life? Because, I follow you on Instagram. Obviously that's how we connected, but you've had so many different versions of you. What shifted into this? Like, what was it a eureka moment, or was it just a slow light that kind of got brighter?
I'm going to say like the totality of it has been like since day one, even pre-consciousness, even pre-coming into this 3D realm. But the moment that I actually vividly recall is the moment that I was in a relationship, and that particular relationship did not unfold in the manner in which, again, I expected it to. And it was a triggering relationship. So it was that type of relationship that brought up a lot of, I'm going to say insecurity, shadow work that needed to be done. It brought up just like these elements that I know could not be suppressed any longer. And from there, I tapped into psychology. That's when I started going to school for psychology, but that wasn't deep enough for me. I wanted more. So I started, that's when I went into neuroanatomy, neurobiology, neurochemistry, like all that particular field. So from there, just understanding, like here we are with this 3D realm, right? And with those different fields of academics that I started taking, we literally start going deeper into like molecular level. So from that molecular level, I'm like, man, I know this is not the deepest. Let's go a little deeper. So where else do you go from the atomic level? Now you're going into the spirituality realm. So from that spirituality, that's where the shit got real, bro. Like all that surface level shit, like I can do behavioral modification all day. I can do like that stuff is playground. But going into the spiritual realm, bro, like that's where like that, how you mentioned, like the awakening moment truly came. That's where I'm tapping into chakras. That's where I'm tapping into like auras and like energy fields, receptors. Like, man, that's where shit got real, bro. So from there, like once that relationship unfolded in the manner in which it did, it was just like, okay, it's time to go deeper. It's time to immerse into you, or this perceived self-image of you, and let's really rock and roll. So like that's where it all was born from, literally.
It's a scary journey to go down. It's a scary path to kind of walk, because we are, and again, you explained it, where it's this, the psychological and the analytical aspect of things on an academic level that we can comprehend and conceive, and okay, that makes sense. And, once you start to peel back the onion and you go into these deeper layers,
the intangibles.
I'm sorry?
The intangibles, the metaphysics, right?
Exactly.
Right.
you're deeper into it, and they're no longer, I don't want to say relatable. I think it is galactically and universally relatable. But when it goes into, like you said, the 3D element of things, and that conversation with someone, it's a very different conversation to be having. Even just your regular conversation you're having, it's just a different experience. And the lens shift is what you need to get adapted to.
Hell yeah, bro.
It's a hard shift in it's perspective, but at the same time it's a knowing.
It is. That's why I mentioned like that word understanding, because like the moment that, how you said, peel back the layers of the onion, that's where like vulnerability tapped into. I don't know how you were raised, but especially in my culture, bro, like vulnerability is not an aspect in which we are conditioned to express. Like everything is so tough, so rigid, be this alpha male, be
Sure.
like this, what the fuck are you crying for? Why these emotions? Like suck it up and be a man. Like that type of rhetoric, that type of information was downloaded like toughly into me. And then to reinforce it, going to the military only perpetuated that whole alpha male dynamic, you know? So peeling back those layers, like that took a lot of work. And like, if you're not committed to the process, man, I can't fathom what it would be or what it would unfold into, you know?
That, and also, you can't just dip your toe in. Once all of a sudden you take the red pill, you're going. Like we're out of the gate. Like we're going now. What made you go into the service?
What made me? So I had a scholarship to go to school. I was tired of school. I didn't want that route no more. The funny thing is, at that moment in life, I didn't want that whole schooling thing. But later on in life, I would take like all these years of dedication to school. But at that particular moment, I just graduated from high school. I didn't want to take, I'm a contrarian by heart. So I didn't want to take the route that everybody else was taking. Everybody was going to school. So everybody was either going to school or everybody was getting a job. I was like, you know what? Let me go travel. Let me go do this for free. Plus the recruiter gave me this whole beautiful speech. None of it was true, of course, so I learned the hard way. So it was just one of those, bro, you're going to be in the office with a bunch of girls. You're going to be in the AC. You'll never have to deploy because you're the only child, blah, blah, blah. Like all this foo-foo. I signed up. Once I graduated from basic training, I want to say like my first 3 months, I'm already packing for Iraq, my first deployment. But when I first initially got there, they were already packing. So I'm telling my superiors, listen, I'm not going. I'm the only child. My recruiter said X, Y, and Z. I'm supposed to be in the office. They was like, listen, we can do this the hard way. We can do this the easy way.
Wow.
So I was like, what's the easy way? All right, just go to JAG and look up articles so and so. So I go to JAG, look up articles so and so. Then I see the fine print that says basically your father had to have served in the military, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, I'm in Iraq, bro.
Wow.
So, but I can say this, man, like I'm the type, I make the best out of every circumstance or every situation that I'm ever in, because I truly understand that the universe is working through me. And like between the 4D and the 5D, I understand that I am, and I understand that I'm also like that co-creator. So I made the best of the circumstance and came out like truly, truly, truly altered and evolved from our previous version, you know?
Yeah. You mentioned the universe working through you, and those are definitely 3 shifts of perspective, right? 2, 4, and through, right? And when you're in the 2 mentality, you're the victim. When you're in the 4 mentality, you're the receiver. And then when you're in the through mentality, you're like you said, you're the creator, the co-creator, you're the reader, the actor, you're everything in the play. And that, again, that's another hard shift to make. Was that something that you were kind of transitioning into, having signed up for the military, or is that something that kind of hit you in the back of the head?
During that moment, you know, like when you are just like in flow state, but you don't know you're in flow state. Like you're doing all the, like for instance, when I was in psychologist, like classes for psychology, like that's where I began to put labels and identify all the things that I've already been doing, but I never knew I was doing them.
Sure.
And that's how it was for me, like in the military, like, or even the transition signing up into the military. Like I'm doing all this stuff, I'm flowing, I'm aligned to my level of degree of consciousness, but I did not know. Like I didn't, consciousness, what the hell was consciousness back then? You know? So like I was doing all the things,
Sure.
I was receiving downloads, but again, I didn't know like the labels to them. I didn't know how to identify. I didn't know how to even like bring to surface level and like manipulate and play with what I was experiencing.
Yeah, you didn't have the perspective of, and you didn't have the lens on to see clearly, right? And I could definitely think of some moments in my life where you are, like you said, you're in a flow state, and it doesn't mean anything that you're actually, you know, like I think of like the birth of my children specifically. And I remember walking into the room and feeling like, okay, I'm waiting for them to be like, all right, and cut, good scene. All right, Vin, bring out the doctor now. You know, like it's so surreal. You know, you're waiting. Or like I remember one time I was surfing for the first time and the only time, and I was paddling out, and I remember the sun kind of coming up over the horizon, and I'm paddling out, and I literally, like, now in hindsight, I'm like, I feel like I could have like surfed into the wall, like the Truman Show. Like I would just surfed into the into the sun, right into the sun. Like it's so surreal. And in hindsight, you could have that perspective, right, on what you were doing. And then once you obviously can label it something, then you're in the position where you're able to manipulate it and start to put it on a trajectory towards, you know, working through you.
Yes, hell yeah. Because it's that whole philosophy of like, I can't connect the dots looking forward, but like that ability for me to look back and now see these dots is like, this makes sense. This totally makes sense. Now take those same dots, those same elements, the wisdom acquired from them, and apply it forward. Now like that level of awakening is like, this makes sense. So when I run into an element that I've previously experienced possibly in another lifetime or just a repeat of that particular moment, it's like, okay, this makes sense. I know how to navigate more effectively this particular experience, you know? So hell yeah, bro.
Yeah, I think a big part of that for me is when I was able to learn to respond to life rather than react to life.
Yeah.
And, you know, having that what is a split moment of time, but it can feel like it's, you know, eternity almost. Like you could almost freeze frame, you know, between the trigger or the action to your response or your reaction, and you kind of could choose which way you could feel that middle. And I think that's such an important lesson, you know, to A, learn and B, to teach. Like I try to teach that to my daughter when she's getting, you know, frustrated or whatever it is. I'm like, listen, this is just like the other thing. It's just in a different form now. Like it's the same. And I try to do that with my clients or whatever it is, where you're going after not a thing, but a feeling.
Right. But it's that cognitive switch, man. Like that switch is like jammed for most of us. And the moment like we finally get that circuit over and engage it on, it's like, whoa, what the hell is this? All the lights come back up, you know? Literally, man, literally.
Why do you think people get tripped up on that switch?
I'm going to say from one, we aren't tripped up. We typically aren't switched up as toddlers. It's more so when we come into the evolvement of influence of external stimuli is when we get all of these bombardments of conditioning, all these bombardments of perspectives and opinions of how we should be. So like that whole concept of building up over time, fusing all of those elements together, it's like, I feel like those are the blockades to that circuit switch being engaged fully on. But it's like, again, back to your concept, the moment we begin to peel those layers back of the onion, I feel like each layer comes off, like it reduces the pressure and the magnitude of pressure that's on that actual circuit. So like the deeper that we go, I won't say deeper, but like the more quality of unfolding that we do, the easier the engaging mechanism becomes of that particular circuit, you know?
Sure. Now, other than beach meditation, do you do any other modalities or any like plant medicine ceremonies or, you know, any float tanks or anything like that?
I've tried the float tank once, but my main go-to is either the beach meditation or my sound bowls. So like I got a whole collection of like the sound bowls, and I'm heavily into that one. Like what I've been doing these past couple weeks, I've been researching other modalities, but like I haven't found one that actually sticks yet. What are some that you suggest?
My big go-to is the float tank.
Float tank?
I've done some breath work. I did, you know, breath work in ceremony actually in here, and that was super powerful, like super like next level. But my go-to is the float tank.
Why would you say float tank?
It was just something that for me, a big part of why I didn't do it initially, and I thought about it and I was like, well, why don't I want to do this? And I sat in that space, and it came up. I was like, well, I'm afraid of what I'm going to think. And in that moment, I was like, well, that means you have to do it because that means you're afraid of yourself. And that's even scarier than anything that you're going to think inside that tank.
100%.
So I kind of just stepped into that space. And from the moment I walked out there, I was like, oh, this is something that I want to be a part of. And this is like something I need to be implementing. This is a tool. And it's just something about, removing all the senses and kind of, again, I've reached the point in there that the creator of the float tank, John C. Lilly, referred to as the 0 point, which I'm sure you've heard of, where like that, that balance of nothingness and like I can't even put into words, but it's the nothingness and everything.
That's what made me ask you, because like the experience, like trying to regurgitate the experience, I find not difficulty, but like I find like human language not being able to encompass that experience.
Yeah, you could use all the words in the dictionary to explain it, and it still doesn't capture the essence of it, right? It doesn't capture the actual feeling of abundance and void, right? So I've experienced that, and he even says like that's still, because you can experience it, that means you still have another, you can go further, which makes sense. But for me, it's just something that I get a lot of clarity from. It does silence kind of everything and brings the narrator to the forefront, where I can kind of just tap into, whatever's coming up, whatever needs to be said or thought, if you will, is kind of there. And there's no other distractions. Like even in meditating, there's just the opportunity for distraction and
people coming onto the beach.
Yeah. Seagulls, whatever.
Seagulls.
Goddamn. But for me, it just seems to work the best.
How often would you say that you like incorporate it?
I was doing it for about once a month. But again, depending on my availability, but like when I get into a good flow, I like to do at least twice a month, every other week, and that's where you can kind of, because it works in both ways, right? You get the clarity of being inside there, but then you have to, it's like any other practice, whether it be yoga or whatever it is, you have to, incorporate it into your life and take what you learned in those moments. And how do you roll that out? And how do you interact with the world now with this new information and this new perspective?
100%. For sure, man. Like it's one of those to where like, when I come to Jersey, like when we link, we gotta go to the tank, man.
Let's go, man. Let's go. I work with a local float center coaching. So I have coaching clients with them. And we use the tank as an opportunity to kind of silence everything. And then we kind of unpack what comes up in the tank and, implement those things into life and, creating those healthy lifestyles in and out of the tank to,
I like that, man.
To work with each other. Yeah, we'll definitely go floating. You're also a speech pathologist.
See, put it like this. I literally graduated and never practiced.
My mom's a speech pathologist.
Oh, for real, man?
Yeah.
I loved it, but again, like I never actually practiced it, but I obtained my degree from it. So it's from high school to military to speech pathology to psychology to neuroscience to audio engineering to back to neuroscience again. And now literally retiring from neuroscience to full-fledged, just investing in real estate, writing books, enjoying my life and traveling. Beautiful. So it's like, I get bored so easy, but I love to commit and learn to like new experiences. So I can't even recall how I ended up going down that route to speech pathology, man. Like when I initially started, like it wasn't even an interest for me. But once I started like interacting like with the children, sure. I think that's what like triggered it for me to like truly like, okay, let me dedicate to this. But again, once I graduated, I never practiced. So that's when I immediately went into like the psychology aspect.
Was it the element of helping the children, or was it the okay, it was. Okay. Because I was like,
you know what? The fact that you even said that word help, it instantly just brought me back to a moment where I have an idea, but I'm going to explore it deeper. Like once we end this, that concept of we attempt to become that individual that we needed when we were children.
Sure.
And I think the moment that you said help, like it triggered a thought and a whole neural pathway towards that particular experience, bro.
Good.
So that's something I need to explore. Yes.
Excellent. Good. Wow. Good. I'm happy. I was happy to do that.
Is this free consult, man?
What's up?
Is this a free consult?
Absolutely. No charge. No charge. But yeah, I think, speech pathology is probably like this kind of step into that world in its own right, because obviously you're providing a service and you're trying to to help children who can't communicate, right? So there's something that, I look at my son who, like I said, is a year and a half, and he has a very extensive vocabulary, and he speaks in 3-word utterances, and he communicates very well. But I would think that when you don't have the ability to communicate your points, and I see the frustration that comes up in him when he can't,
Keyword.
it brings, like, you're almost trapped inside your own mind, which is very sad to see, especially with children, and not being able to express themselves to their ability.
I've seen it so much because it creates, like you said, it creates that level of frustration. Like, again, like the voice, the patterns, the recognitions, all that is a ball of energy attempting to be released. Energy is not meant to be stored. So of course, like, what happens to pipes when pressure is like continuously pumped into it? They expand, they burst, they explode. So it's the same concept when that level of like frustration comes out, and that expression of that modality of expression is then completely frustration, anger, lashing out, disciplinary activity is taken, like just all these different elements simply from the idea that this child is simply trying to communicate and can't because of the frustration, because of the blockades, So like those elements, man, it broke my heart watching these children go through experiences like that.
Yeah.
And then like having parents on top of that who don't effectively implement like the level of patience that is required for it.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart, bro.
But it's hard as the parent, right? Because their frustration level, I'm sure, is through the roof, right? So they're at the point where they're just, they want their child to communicate. Obviously, there's a level of frustration, there's a level of, I'm sure, sadness. You know what I mean? Like there's so much going on their end of it, where like you're always patient with other people's kids more than you are with your own, right?
Always, man, always. And I know, and I get it, because it's a perspective from the parent. They're not looking at it from, no parent wants to ever admit that there is a form of disability or a form of handicap in their particular child. So that perspective is not even a light bulb within them. So they're just seeing like, why is my child just acting out? Blah, blah, blah. Like they want to get straight to that point, but there are layers underneath that. Let's tap into those layers and truly identify and create a sense of understanding around what actually is the underlying issue.
Right.
So,
and my wife's a special ed teacher, so I see that with her as well. Just from the stories that she shares, where the level of frustration from the parents and the level of frustration from the students, they're almost, in their own world with each other, and for you to have to break into that world and then give perspective to the parents, like you said, that could be a challenge in its own right.
Because a lot of the children are just modeling. They see their parents frustrated. What do? They mirror that. Yeah. And here goes the whole process, the whole cycle of cognitive and emotional conditioning. Yeah. Now, that is their response of when they get to a challenge, as opposed to like, I see some children, especially like what I like to work with my daughter through, like I'll give her a task and I would step back and watch. So like, I don't constantly like that whole, I love scaffolding, but I don't like scaffolding to like the point of like handicapping. So it's that topic or that perspective of allow her to experience those emotions, let those emotions come up, and let's work through those emotions once they arise. Like once I see it to like a threshold, it's time for me to step in. It's like, babe, but what if we look at it like this? So like now she has this whole concept of, oh, I got an idea. We can try like this. So like just seeing those little elements of those scaffolding techniques like implemented, it's mind blowing, man. Because they have the ability. It's just speaking their language.
Right. And the other part of it is also the idea that, when it comes to adults in that fast, it's also, we're just, basically big children. Like that's the reality of it. Like, that's the reality of it. We're just because we are, bigger stature, doesn't mean that cognitively, yes, we should know more and all that stuff. But for the most part, we're just big children walking around, and a lot of people are walking around and they haven't explored these things within themselves, and they haven't taught themselves those things where it's, hey, this is the same situation as this. How can I, respond differently? Or they haven't built that scaffolding around the way they perceive things or how they move forward with things. And then obviously it just becomes, it obviously just trickles down. And then obviously we have a system that's in place, whether educationally or whatever rabbit hole you want to go down, but there we have a system in place that doesn't lend itself to teaching how to build the scaffolding. It kind of just pushes things through the system.
Or sweep underneath the carpet. bumps all in the carpet all over the place now. Now you're tripping all over life. So I get it, man. Like another aspect is I noticed, like, for instance, with just watching my nieces and nephews, I tend to revert or relate their experiences to my own life. Because a lot of time, man, the inner child in here has began to truly resurface, really like coming back out. Like the whole reparenting aspect of my existence has truly been a focus. So, because again, just like over life, it's just been like focus on the goal, accomplish this. I have to accomplish this by this day. Like it's just been that whole go, go, go mentality. But like now it's just been like that reversal aspect of coming back inwardly and tapping into that inner child, bringing that inner child out. Like seeing my daughter play and like me not being tapped into technology, me not being tapped into like the external world, but literally just coming here and being in this moment of time and space has truly like created an environment that's conducive to safety and vulnerability for that inner child to actually stick its head out and see like, oh, I like this world now, you know? Like now its ability to be able to like come out and beyond stick his head out, jump out and actually play. And like that's the experience, that's the lifestyle in which like I'm cultivating in this particular moment. That's what Cosmic is really about right now, you know?
Yeah, because again, you need to, you have to unlearn everything you've learned, right? You have to go back in order to move forward, and, you know, unpacking a lot of that stuff that we don't, you know, I openly said before I even got into the float tank, I'm afraid of what I'm going to think, you know?
Right.
And, you know, we don't have to, but to step into that space, that's where all the healing's done. That's how you do move forward. And that's how you do grow. And in my opinion, you know, that's how we make a better world.
Agree.
You know, I want to talk about neuroscience, man, neuroplasticity, the whole Megillah. So talk to me about that. What got you into that world?
Again, like that psychology aspect just wasn't deep enough for me. I wanted to know, like from the molecular level, I wanted to know the neurotransmitters associated with certain things. Like I wanted those experiences beyond the surface. And that psychology, it just wasn't doing. Psychology is dope. I freaking love it. Like that's the language I'm able to communicate with most people on.
Sure.
But again, like beneath that surface, like it just needed some elements understanding to like, okay, addictions from happiness to orgasms to behavioral to frustrations, like what's going on. And that was the field. Like once I started looking up, I just kept seeing like all these neuroscience this, neuroscience that, neuroscience that. So I went down here to school called Florida Atlantic University, FAU, and basically signed up for that program, got accepted, boom, never looked back. So immediately what I had to do is like I had to implement some of that neuroscience into some books. So like right now I'm working on this book called Infinite Being, where I'm merging the two elements of spirituality and neuroscience and fusing them into one. So we can gather a sense of understanding of like what is transpiring when we go through a set of emotions, when we encounter individuals that aren't conducive to or in alignment with our actual fields, like just the whole concept of cultivating, quote unquote, the infinite being. Because like so often we are conditioned to think like limited perspectives. Like we are so beyond that limited aspect, bro. So beyond. Like there was a point in time where I recall like we were taught that there were only 9 planets in the solar system.
Sure.
But like beyond that solar system, or even the concept of the sky is the limit, just like those limiting aspects, it's like, how is the sky the limit when, quote unquote, somebody has walked on the moon? Like, let's go beyond those different elements and explore it deeper. Like we are infinite beings. So let's tap into that and see what the hell we come up to.
Yeah, we have these terms and these slogans that we use so haphazardly culturally, where we don't realize that, you know, they're also putting governors on our own engine, you know, and you can go down the rabbit hole of, you know, words being spells or however you want to say it. But the idea that we say the sky is the limit when, like you said, you know, realistically people have been to the moon, it's just become a slogan that we throw around as a motivational one, right?
Right. It worked at one point, like based on that limited frame of reference or information that they had at that moment in time. Like that was truly it, possibly, you know?
Right.
But I just don't feel like it should have carried on, because like now it's carrying on into a time and period where we know for a fact, we can vividly see, and I still hear children say, sky's the limit, sky's the limit. And here I am being the heartbreaker, like, no, sky's not the limit. They're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You know, so just like, it's just like, I do it in a very respectful way, because you never want to like intervene on a parent's child, especially like if you don't have like the permission from the parent. But it's just one of those to where like just giving them like bits and pieces and crumbs to the puzzle, you know? Like, plant that seed, because you never know where that seed can come.
Yeah, and just giving them a little bit of something to think about, right? Just something to kind of chew on a little bit, even though they're just little beings. It still is. Yeah, exactly. Plant that seed. You mentioned, you know, kind of tying in the element of spirituality and neuroscience, right? And you can go back and forth on those two elements all day. You know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, are we having a spiritual experience? Are we having a physical experience that's being expressed through synapses and neural pathways? And, you know, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what did come first in your opinion?
In my opinion, for me, it really depends what
a question, right? Like,
I know it really is a question, because it depends on like what day it is of the week, what side of the bed I wake up on. But like, I'm gonna say like today in this moment, it's more so of spirituality is it all, the totality. From there, we pick bits and pieces up and bring it into the next dimension, to where like, okay, let me pull out the neuroscience experience. Let me pull out the psychology experience. Let me pull out the podcast experience. Like, I feel like all those different elements stem from that spirituality concept, you know? Like, it's bits and pieces that we can take from each of those and then begin to pull out even more. And I just feel like it's all an extension of one. You know, so like, it's easy in this moment for me to say it's the spiritual aspect.
Sure.
But like, then even when you start thinking about like the contrarian aspect of that perspective, it's like you can easily flip it on the side and like reverse it. So I just like, I like to stick with that concept of it's all an extension of one.
Yeah. Turning over that stone.
What about you? Let me ask you, what do you think?
I agree with you. And that's not to give I think through my experiences, it all does come from one source. And for me, that particular source is spiritual, you know? And I think that we could put those spiritual experiences into, you know, you can measure them, right? You can measure them, you know, with charts or, you know, neuroscience and, you know, there's tons of ways to track them. And then we could measure those physically, right, in the body, you know, whether it be, you know, manifestations in different areas of your body, whether it be chakras or cancer or whatever it is, it's going to find its home, it's going to find its root.
Right.
But I think ultimately I agree with you that it does stem from a spiritual element, and the word spiritual gets thrown around, and it could be religious, and it doesn't make a difference to me. It's just, again, it's that overall feeling of abundance and void in what felt like eternity, but realistically was also a second.
Right.
Less than a second.
It's funny because like sometimes even saying that word, like especially like old school family members have difficulty of me even speaking the word spirituality.
Sure.
What is this voodoo shit you're talking about?
Yeah.
So it's like, don't mess around and don't bring out like sage and like what are you doing? Like, what is this? Not in my house. Exactly, bro. Exactly, man. But it's just it's
Palo Santo.
You got it all too, man.
But here's the thing, right? But if you take that, right, and you could say that's woo-woo, hippie shit, whatever you want to call it, but it's okay. You know, I grew up Catholic, and I was actually just having this conversation with my mother. You know, it's okay to have the incense going down, right? That's another again, it goes back to our previous point. That's just another version of this.
Agreed. It's all an extension. And even the concept of praying, like you get down and pray. Sure. Like it blows my mind. So again, like I come from a level of understanding. There's no reactivity to it. I just know from that level, that individualistic perspective, that's where you're at consciously. And I get it. You know, so like if you're looking for a reaction, that's not what you're gonna get here. Because I see you. I am you, you know, so I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you threw me off by the I see you, I am you, because I want to go back to that for a moment. But again, it's another variation of the same thing, right? And that's the conversation I was having, is like essentially religions, they're all, it's Sunoco, it's Shell Gas, it's BP. It's all the same shit. They have a different price tag and a different slogan and a different logo, but ultimately it's all the same, right? And that goes back to our point where if it's all the same and these expressions of that common ground are different, and those are the variables, then you have to go back to the root of what's the same.
Right.
You mentioned, I am you, I see you. I think that was a big perspective shifter for me, was the realization that we're all, children, and realistically we're all each other, right? That mirror where you could recognize that you are someone else, and they're no different. What was that moment for you?
Real quick. Hold on, let me ask you just real quick. What got you there?
Dealing with people. I worked in the car business for 10 years. I was a manager, and seeing the different people and the different scenarios that they would bring up. And just the way people would, it sounds trivial, but the way people would express the same thing. It sounds weird, but they would tell the same story in a different way. It was like always the same thing, right? And it was recognizing, again, the child within all of us, and then kind of being in a state where you're like, oh, like I was there. Like I was in your shoes at one point. And one particular time stood out to me that I'll share with you. I was coming home. I was walking out of Comic-Con with my buddy. And my wife had called me and she's like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? I was like, oh, we're leaving. She's like, all right, cool. I made beef stew. It was October. So I made beef stew. There's biscuits, I'll see you when you get home. Okay, great. So every year I pack like a lunch, right? Pack like a PBJ, some bananas, some water, spending the day. And we're leaving, and there's a homeless guy on the street. So I stop and I give him a banana, a bottle of water and a sandwich. And my buddy turns to me, he's like, well, that was like awfully nice of you. I was like, that guy's me. Like, that guy, I'm going home to a beef stew with biscuits and a cold beer, and I got a bag full of comics, and I'm like, I'm going home to a warm, like that guy's sitting there, like that's his existence. That could be me. He's like, oh, okay, he was like, all right, cool.
I get it.
But I recognize that, like, that is just me in another body, in another form, and life could be just as quickly, unfortunate.
The fact that you even said like a less fortunate individual, that you felt the compulsion to provide like food and beverage to them, same concept, bro. I'm riding in the car, me and my mother. I'm a little kid. For some reason, I've never felt it before, but there was a moment where we passed by this less fortunate guy sleeping on the street. And
see, the dog's barking because it's true.
Come here, good boy. Down. Boot up. Stop. So there was the element where basically I felt so compelled to, Mom, we have to come back and give this guy food. So we're going home. Instead of beef stew, it was spaghetti. So we had already had spaghetti, banging meal, bro, like the garlic bread, the whole nine. So we head back home, we get the food and come back. Like the whole way home, though, I am pure bawling, like this, crying. My mom kept asking me, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And I just kept saying, that could be us. Like, that can literally be us. Like, here's this little kid, like, talking and thinking like that. But for some reason, from that age all the way up into my mid-20s, I've never experienced such sensation again. But once I get I'm going to say around like 26 on a holiday, I think it was around Christmas time frame, I experienced that again. But this time I paid attention to it because I started reconnecting the dots from that previous experience. Yeah. And at around like 26 years old, I experienced the same thing, different person, of course, different corner, even different state.
Different spaghetti.
I went bigger and just started, like, me and my friends, I was like, you know what? We're going to prepare a whole meal, and we're just basically just going to go pass it out to all these people underneath the bridge. So, like, all my friends came over. We did a huge thing. People kept asking me, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? But back then, I'm too cool. I didn't want to be, like, vulnerable. But inside, I'm like, man, that's us. That can literally be us. And when I say us, I'm legitimately talking about, like, everybody in this room. But, like, I wanted to express that, but I different. So then fast forward a couple years ago, like, now I'm in that space where, like, I can communicate. So, like, when my friends ask me this time, I'm like, that's us, man. Like, in every aspect, I started explaining, like I even took out a pen and paper and started drawing. Like, so for instance, guys, let's look at it like this. We can start from the galactic aspect, or we can start from a grand of saying aspect, or even the molecular aspect. So I drew like a little, I drew a cell, a mitochondria basically. And I just started coming back, and I drew an organism. From the organism, I drew, like, I just kept going bigger and bigger all the way till I got to the galactic aspect. And I'm like, within this entire diagram resides all of us. This entire aspect is a single organism. Like, there is no true separation. Like, even the concept of time, the illusion of the separation, like all these different elements that apply to this diagram, like, we reside within this, but we are so conditioned to think externally, especially in our culture. Like, we are so individualistically driven here that it's like legit mind blowing, to where all we see is differences in each other, bro. And like, just from like one or two was like, yo, keep talking that shit. But the other one, the select few were like, bro, what the hell are you even talking about? Blah, blah, blah. You know? So, but the moment you said like the less fortunate guy, like that brought me back instantly, man. Instantly.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's so important at different points of your life to surround yourself by different people, right? So the dog's barking for confirmation again.
Oh, man.
The dog knows, man.
They do.
They do. Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's so important to keep, those people around you that say like, hey, keep on going with that a little bit, because
Right.
it gives you this sense of assurance that you're like in a space that you can kind of step into that space. But it goes back to when you were 25 with the same mindset, going through the same experiences with the same feelings, but weren't able to step into that to the best of your ability because of the cultural stigmas, or because of whatever you stepped into at that time, you didn't feel comfortable enough to express it.
100%, man. Because again, it's like in your rearing, in your experiences, like, was the space like conducive for you to express yourself?
Right.
Was it? No, I'm asking you.
For me, I mean, I was with one friend, and he was like, he recognized that it was a nice gesture that I made. We didn't wax on poetically about it after that, pretty much,
What about like childhood?
I'm
Like,
sorry?
what about like childhood? Was there like a conducive environment for you to be able to like
Oh
express
yeah.
emotions and stuff?
Yeah. I was definitely in a household that was very open to expressing yourself. And, it wasn't like a, be a man type of thing. No, it was pretty open to that. So I was definitely blessed in that regard, and so many others, growing up, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, but then again, culturally, right? You go outside of your family, and you need to wear the different masks and the different personas, and you have to start saying no and yes to things that you don't even truly like. I remember, I always bring this up. It's a silly one, but it stands out to me. I remember, at one point, it must have been like 11 or 12, maybe a little bit, like around 12 probably. And my buddy saying like, oh, you still play with toys? And I'm like, no, so a part of me that like, by the way, Boba Fett helmet. I mean, like there's a Padme, there's a R2D2 in here. I mean, but that part of me, right, at that time wasn't able to like, but like I was at that shift, right? So then what are you suppressing within yourself when you make these kind of adjustments based on the people around you? It goes to your point, like your mom provided your space where you were able to cry and say to her like, that could be us, mom, like that could be us. But then culturally you lock that child away because of fear of people making fun of you or whatever it was, and you weren't able to express that until later on. Then all of a sudden people are like, yeah, tell me more about that, because their version of that might be different, but it's still there.
And they hit you with that cognitive dissonance. But the point that I love the most, man, is like, once I experienced that, yo, tell me more, that's where, again, like that circuit breaker was engaged on, to where like, yo, I don't need validation or confirmation from external sources for me to be able to express myself. So then from that little experience, it just gave me the confidence, which of course confidence doesn't stay contained. It starts to roll over in other areas of existence. So now here it is, like literally just the cup runneth over, and now like confidence is just pouring out. I don't need validation. I don't seek validation. It's more so of just flow, you know? So like that was the cool part about that particular experience.
You mentioned flow. What puts you in a particular flow state?
Like what puts me in flow is like at the core, surrender, but it's more so of like I've developed that intuitional guidance aspect. Like I've cultivated like a relationship with the inward self to be able to surrender, feel safe in my particular environment, and be able to just go. So like whether it's writing, whether it's talking, whether it's like standing up on a stage, like flowing, whether it's being interactive with my child, whether it's just like being in nature, like any of those moments, like I'm able to tap into like a pure state of flow to where nothing else exists. And it's like everything is just slowed. And it's just like the movements aren't calculated. The movements don't have no destination. There's no goal. There's no expectancy. It's just when I come up out of it, I'm like, whoa, what was that? You know? So like that's what that experience is like for me. But what I love the most is when I come out of it, I'm able to draw different elements from it. Whether it's one with like the number doesn't like the quantity doesn't matter, but it's cool because the elements now provide like a grandiose aspect for me to now apply to life, you know? So like that's the dopest part for me, man. Like what am I able to extract from this? Because again, I don't go into the flow state with the expectancy of, oh, I'm going to be able to pull something out. I just experience it, you know? But I'm just the type of person, like I love to analyze, but like I don't like to overanalyze to where like it creates anxiety or like depressive states of minds or nothing like that. It's just, you know what, let me receive the download. What's going to come to me? And again, I just start manifesting and attracting that particular element, which one is called to me, take that element and I apply it to life, you know?
That's a thin line though, that being a deep thinker, you know, I will absolutely say I think very deeply. And sometimes you have to, you know, people say like, I remember one particular time someone said like, well, not everything's that deep. Yeah. And I'm like, no, but yeah, because if you're going to put that lens on things and you're going to magnify and analyze and dive into this one particular thing, you know, it doesn't mean that that other thing is not just as potentially deep. And maybe you don't want to explore that for subconscious reasons that you don't know. But it doesn't mean that it's not worth questioning.
Why are you projecting? That's my first question. Like, why are you projecting that limitability of mind frame onto me? If you don't believe that everything is not that deep, that's cool. Yeah. But technically, that question, why, can lead you down rabbit holes like you've never imagined.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's a big thing of what we're seeing now on a larger scale. You know, whether you want to say politically, socially, whatever you want to say, I think what we're seeing is that ability of people going down the rabbit hole of why and questioning whatever it may be. Right. And that, again, that becomes a very slippery slope when it's on a large scale like this. I'm sorry?
Affecting others as well.
Sure. And it's worth diving into. But again, I think most people don't have the conscious and cognitive ability to keep those thoughts in check. And it goes back to the previous point of people acting like children. So they're not given the avenues or the outlets that are healthy. So they take these things and they express them in different ways. That definitely disrupts the energetic field of the earth.
Especially when it's magnetized, televised. I agree, man.
You know, and again, that's not a political stance in any way, shape, or form. I think it's just, again, it's a lack of knowledge and awareness, and people operate on the frequency and the vibration that they're on. And unfortunately, a lot of people on whatever side of whatever fence you want to look on or be on, that connection on a deeper level is what's missing. You know, I want to ask you, you're the creator of the Shift Academy. Talk about that. What is the Shift Academy? What is it looking to achieve? He's getting his already. I'm the one in the 28-degree shed. You're my.
You sent chills to me because right before we were even doing this, I'm typing up like what I'm doing. I'm creating a course, a platform in which I noticed the biggest hang up on most of us, whether it's a parent not being able to accept accountability and implement a level of apology to the child, all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, to where I'm not able to have a perspective outside of my own. Like, I'm fusing all those different elements together to where, like, I'm creating a level of consciousness. So this shift is, in a sense, a shift of consciousness, a shift in paradigm, and a shift in just overall schema. I'm implementing different apparatuses and different tools, different techniques, science research techniques, peer-reviewed techniques, to be able to take that current thought, that current challenge, whatever it may be, and be able to take it from out of us, put it in front of us, and put the challenge on trial. So with this, so it's based on cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, now it's more so, first of all, okay, I have this challenge here. Why am I not able to possibly see it beyond my current perspective? Okay, let's start with why. So from that why, I'm able to go back to another question, continuing to go back to another question until I possibly get to the basis of possibly something like the whole reverse engineering aspect.
Sure.
So, like, take these tools and question, what, like, a sense of metacognition, like question the way that we think, or question the way that we approach different elements of life, because they aren't all effective. They aren't all serving us in the most optimized level in which they possibly could. So maybe our conditioning is erroneous now, but it served a purpose at one particular point in time. But now it's time to shift those different elements to get the results that you're actually desiring. Because most of the time that we want results, like, we'll beat ourselves up over it, but we aren't getting to that particular result because of our erroneous thinking, our limited frame of reference. But now it's time to shift into a mindset of abundance, as opposed to, like, that mindset of lack and destitute. Because a lot of us, let's just admit it, like, majority of us have that limited frame of reference. But the whole infinite being aspect that I was mentioning earlier, it's time to tap into that and shift into that infinite being thinking and create this abundant life that we all are able to enjoy to the fullest extent. So I'm just going to create a online course about it. And I'm going to go in depth about, like, I'm going to do different videos. I'm going to have worksheets. I'm going to have a book. I'm going to have a mindfulness journal, like, all these different apparatuses. Because I understand different people learn in different ways. Like, some are tactile, some are auditorial. So I want to provide, like, different elements to tap into that person's learning language, you know?
Yeah.
So,
You talk about, kind of that reverse engineering, and that's something that I've definitely experienced. I called it, like, matrixing my emotions, where, like, the bullet of my emotion is coming towards me and I have to stop and bend around it and then take it, open it up, look inside of it. And then, like you said, ask that question, why, and it can't, for me particularly, it can't stop there. I have to just keep on, like you said, reverse engineering it until you get to the root of it. And then you have to look at that root and analyze it and kind of put an honest perspective on it. And that's something that, like I said, the float tank definitely provides me, is the ability to reverse engineer things and give it an honest narrative that isn't me, right? That isn't just being manipulated by stimulus or the tangible experience, right?
right, totally.
You mentioned I kind of want to go into quantum physics a little bit because you talked about kind of going into a mindset or a purpose of abundance rather than lack, right? How important for you and from your experiences is kind of that, we kind of touched upon it before a little bit, like tapping into that feeling, but then using that feeling to guide you, which also ties into like a quantum experience.
So abundance abundance mentality for me is a absolute priority. Why? Because I've noticed, operating from a mindset of destitute and a mindset of lack, I'm not able to fully emit this source of energy that is attempting to travel to its next quote unquote destination or its next receptor. So by me retaining certain elements, certain aspects of my existence, whatever it may be, I'm not fully living in my sense of purpose, because here I am, based upon these external stimuli, opinions and perspectives, I'm now retracting certain elements that need to be emitted into this frequency, because no telling who and what, being a part of this collective, I know for a fact that there are elements inside of me that are going to trigger thresholds within another individual, quote unquote individual. So that abundant mentality is like, you know what? Give my all. I'm going to receive more. I will refill immediately. And I'm never empty. So it's that, again, it's just one of those elements to where, like, you know what? Keep going, keep giving, keep providing. As long as like my mental space is clear and my intention is well, I'm going to just give all until I feel empty. But I know for a fact that I will be replenished. I will be rewarded like greatly. So like that mentality of abundance just creates a different drive for me. And it's that drive that continuously, like for instance, people ask me like, how you create all these little Twitter quotes, blah, 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 and all that stuff, right? How you write all these magnitude of books? Because like I'm tapped into abundance to where like I trust source that I'm not going to run out. Like I just have so much within that I've tapped into that I know I need to regurgitate in some form, in some format. So now, like, I'm literally, bro, it's like 20 books right now that I'm working on, man. That's why I'm saying, like, once I get everything situated, like that studio, definitely going to be part of it. But again, it's just one of those to where, like, there's just so much here that is desiring to come out. And working on this throat chakra, working on this third eye chakra, like the ability to receive the download and the ability to express the download has been everything. And don't even get me started on the root chakra, because it's one of those elements to where like now I have that basic, beyond basic trust in my ability to be able to express it, and my ability and connection to be able to receive the download, you know? So that's what it's been for me. Like that abundance mentality is the impetus to my drive.
How do you not get burnt out from things?
Because it's flow. It's connectivity at its finest. Like don't get it twisted. There are definitely moments, especially having 2 children every day, bro, 12 o'clock, I take naps.
God bless you.
So I take naps. I don't work. Like it's like what sustains my life is all my investment portfolio from real estate. So like the idea of like all I'm doing right now is just passion created material. So if I can easily see, like there was a point in time where like I was working to where like burnout was happening constantly. But now transitioning over into like a passion driven state, shit I haven't experienced it yet.
Yeah.
You know? So like if it does come, like I accept it. I'll take a step back, take a little break from like social media, from writing, all that stuff. But it hasn't come yet.
I did that the week after Christmas into New York. I just was like, I'm not doing anything. I was like, I'm going to meditate if I want to meditate. I'm going to ride the bike if I want to ride the bike. I'm going to do yoga if I want to do it. If I don't, I don't. And some days I did, and some days I didn't. Some days I read, and some days I didn't. But I just allowed everything to kind of subside and see what came up for me and what are the things that I wanted to kind of, all the lessons I learned from this past year, 2020, and take them, analyze them, and what are the skill sets I acquired, what are the things I'm going to implement moving forward, and what are the best ways to go about that. But again, burnout, especially like you said, when you have 2 children, when you're working a conventional job, whatever that is, or just a job that that doesn't align with your purpose, right? That's another one, right? That's a hard thing to compartmentalize yourself and put yourself into these different boxes and still stay whole.
True. I just feel like the element of passion, like when I think of a synonym for passion, I think fuel. Sure. And I feel like anti-passion or lack of passion, the car runs out of fuel. The car's not able to go nowhere. The electric car runs out of electricity and power for it to be able to move. And I feel like tapped into my passion, I'm constantly being like refilled, you know? So like that's a synonym or like an analogy that like it just came now that like I can associate with tapping into passion.
Sure. It's a deep well, right? It doesn't ever run dry. And it's the same thing with like, I think, obviously with children and the wife and the missus and family and stuff like that, you think you could put, the other experience of that, which relates in that capacity is love, right? Love is the same way. When you have a second child, you're going into, you're kind of like, am I gonna love this kid as much as I love the first one? Like you have those moments. And I have a girl and a boy. Like I said, my daughter's 5, my son's 1.5. My daughter's born the day before me. So we're very, very connected and
she's favoritism.
No, not at all. But there's again, he's still 1.5. So his, that ability to communicate I could see me and him in a lot of ways. And I see me and her in a lot of ways, right? And I see my wife and them in a lot of ways. So, but what came up for me, obviously having the first child and the second one on the way, you're kind of sitting there like, how do I love this kid? How do I love this kid just as much, But then all of a sudden they're here, and you're like, oh, I get it. Like it doesn't run out. Like there's not an infinite amount of love that you can give. It doesn't just, okay, now we're out of love today.
Right.
You might have moments where you're like, kids.
There are definitely moments. Definitely moments.
Today was one of those days for me, but at the end of the day, right, there's just this abundance of love that this well that just doesn't. There's no bottom to it, And I think
to come right back to it, man. Every single day.
I think passion's the same way. I agree.
I noticed like with like how you said with my firstborn, like I manifested her like literally from like the top of her hair all the way down to the bottom of her feet, man. Like my twin, like I'm not just talking like phonetically, I'm talking like just emotionally, like the whole nine, man. It's almost like a mirror, and it's scary. It's like it's cool, but it's like, okay, I know what I experienced growing up. I know my different temper tantrums. I know my personality, my temperaments. Okay, let's do some work on the techniques that help me get above these now. Let's start now. So, and it's just like that level of bond was instant.
Sure.
So with my newborn, my daughter's 1 year old too, man. I just noticed that. So with her, it was a bit different because like the bond wasn't instant. It was like, you know what? I'm here for you. Like I definitely care for you. I love you, but it wasn't that like, oh my God, like you are everything, But like it's just interesting because with my first one, it was instant. Yeah. But the same wasn't shared. Like initially it wasn't shared, but like now I can't help but like she comes around the corner, like just screaming dad, and like I just melt. It's like, I'm yours, whatever you want, go.
Yeah, that's the second one.
Yeah, that's the second one.
Yeah, my son was like, my dad, and I'm like, g'day, dude, you said it. And I get that first feeling with my daughter too that you had mentioned because, people are like, oh, do you know what you're having? I was like, I'm having a girl. Like, and then we did find out beforehand, but I knew it. And people are like, oh, you didn't know. I'm like, no. All the poker chips on the table, I'm all the fuck in on girl. I'd be like, no way. I'm like, no. There was not a sliver of doubt in my mind that it was a girl. I was like, whatever it is, all in on girl. I knew it. There was no question about
my mom, I kept hearing, oh, so-and-so, the creator told me that it's going to be a boy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Mom, I'm having a girl. Both times. Mom, I manifested this. I know exactly what it is. Like, we're not doing the gender reveal, none of that stuff.
Sure.
And once the baby's birth and comes out, the doctor held it up. He's like, you were right. Second time, doctor held it up. You were right. It's like, I'm not second guessing myself no more. I'm not taking like those opinions from outside sources no more to invalidate my tap into intuition, So again, like both times, girls, man.
Intuition's huge. Intuition is huge. It's good.
Now I was saying it's just one of those elements that like I'm having fun unraveling it. I'm immensely a child in this experience, tapping into intuition deeper and deeper. And like just the level of the quality of connection is just truly becoming like something that like, wow, I've never experienced before.
Sure. So I want to go back a little bit to the Shift Academy. Take me through just a condensed version of the process of what people could experience when they sign up for something like that.
So you sign like for right now, like everything isn't worked out. So like if I wish I was in my room right now, like I'll show you my board. So like right now, I literally have like a bunch of variables. Like I haven't solidified exactly like.
Is it like a detective board? You just have like strings going across. You look like it looks like.
I literally created like on one side it's a black chalkboard. On the other side it's a magnetic wall, like from top to bottom, from side to side, like just huge, right? So I created this like on the magnetic side, I made flashcards with magnets on the back. So I have the portal. Once you sign up, I have different elements that I'm trying to like tweak and fit into like what's going to go. As soon as you tap into the portal, what's the first thing you see all the way down? And it's going to be like a set of questions Yes or no questions is going to direct you to the elements or the apparatuses to exactly what you need for your particular mindset, your particular circumstance and situation. So it's going to guide you depending upon your yes or no questions. So like once you get to the bottom of that, is then going to open up into like, welcome, you have now come to Shift Academy. Let's begin. So from there, like that's where I'm stopping right now. But like I haven't solidified like, okay, which of all these thousands of elements that I have am I going, and what order am I going to put them into? But like everything is up on the board that I'm going to work with for this particular academy, because I instantly noticed myself bringing other elements from different apparatuses into this program, but I didn't want to like over flood it, you know? So I just want to strictly keep it to like cognitive behavioral therapy. So like, I just need to, between now and Friday, I just want to continuously add those elements into the proper portal to solidify what direction and then translate it over into like digital form.
And now does everyone go through every step of the process, or is it just based off of like four main categories and you're just going down your category based off your personality?
So like basically, because I didn't want like over generalized, you know, like I didn't want that person to like get overwhelmed. So I wanted like specific to that particular question, those sets of questions that you answered yes to, I want you to focus on those. Like if you want to go back, you still have access to come back and get like the overall general course view, and you can get everything. But like for initially, I want you just to experience what you're going through to be more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Because you don't, again, like you said, you don't want to overgeneralize where you just, you know, you want to focus on the individual and what's actually going to help them and guide them and invoke in them, you know, themselves, right? And bring them to the forefront of their own abilities.
I've seen what like the overstimuli would do to a person, like the not even stimuli, but basically like just receiving too much info at once.
Yeah.
What are you retaining?
Yeah.
I want you to retain, you know, I want you to correlate. I want you to connect the dots. I want it to be specific to you. So you are able to be the most effective being in that particular circumstance and approach it. And more importantly, come back to baseline and reach that destination in which you're attempting to, or whatever goal you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, those are all interchangeable, right?
Totally, bro.
For me, you know, it's like the 4-step process of like, you know, it's the awareness, the accountability, the discipline, and then ultimately it's freedom, right?
Yeah.
And so many people step into that awareness. You know, that awareness is, I think, it comes in a multitude of different ways. And then where people get tripped up is the accountability and the discipline. You know, it's not very easy to show up for yourself in so many different ways, and we default to comfort and convenience. What are some of the like disciplines that you've implemented? I'm sure you have like a ritual based around your day. What are some that you've implemented into your life?
So like rituals in what aspect?
So, I mean, I think things shift from habits to rituals, right? So, you know, for me, it was one habit that turned into a ritual for me. Is like, I'd be up at 4:30. I do my yoga, my meditation, my breath work. I'm
4:45, man. Every morning, clockwork, no clock.
Yeah. So, and then when I was in my best version of myself, no clock. Now I'm like all over the fucking place, to be honest with you. But it happens, right? But I know the value in that, right? I know the value of what, like, my day is tangibly different and significantly better when I am up at 4. And two things, I used to wake up, go to CrossFit at 5 in the morning, and I was just doing it because it felt good, right? Because it's like there was just the time based off of what I need to do. I had to do it at that particular time, work, schedule, wife, kids. I had to do it at that time. And then over time, obviously, and it goes to our previous point where you have the grace of hindsight where you can look back and go, oh, and you read something like the 5 a.m. Club by, Robin Sharma, or there's it's called Brahma Muhurta, which is an hour and 36 minutes before the sun comes up. And it's supposed to be the optimal time for like alignment and meditation, both on a physiological level and then obviously on like the cosmic, galactical, spiritual level. Right. So you look back, you go, oh, well, that's why it felt good, right? This tangible reason.
You're giving those labels and identifiers to it now.
Exactly.
You're doing it.
Exactly. So when I say ritual, I guess I mean like the things that you've converted that are kind of become non-negotiables that are part of like your process.
So non-negotiables for sure. every morning, like my circadian rhythm is tuned to it, man. It's around like between 9:30 and 10:30, I'm in the bed, I'm knocked out. So there are moments to where I am
So
four.
thank you for staying up past your bedtime.
I know, right?
You
But
and me
it's all
both, man. You and me both.
no, but what I ended up doing, man, I took 2 naps today because they napped individually. So I was like, fuck it, you know what? I'm gonna get 2 today. So what I ended up doing, like, so every morning, 4:45, I'm up, I'm writing. That's my pre-write. So I'm sitting outside on the balcony, waiting for the sun like to crack just a little bit. As soon as the sun cracks a little bit, I'm walking straight to the beach. I'm there from probably for about like an hour to 2 hours. Soon as I come back from that meditative state, I'm right back to writing. I'm right back to journaling. I'm right back to doing my yoga. I'm doing my stretches. From there, it's kid time. Nothing else matters. I'm tapped into them for about like, at least like between max, like 3 hours. No interrupted, nothing. So from there on, my day is whatever, you know? Like whatever, like I don't like to regiment too much. So like from after that 3 hour point with them, it's whatever. But those
Wow.
first is all me. Those first couple morning hours, all me.
Yeah, that's something that we added a negative stigma to the word selfish. You know, for some reason, being selfish has become this negative stigma where people are like, oh, it gets thrown around so haphazardly, where you need to be, right? You need to have that time allocated to yourself, and whether it be physical self, spiritual self, a combination of them both. It's so important to get back to that and find that time, because that's what's missing for so many people.
I created this. I wish I had one out here. I created this limited edition subscription box that basically on the side of it says self-love is not selfish. Self-love is selflessness. So it's funny that you say that because like that has been my motto. Like we need to understand like what can you truly, again, the cup is never empty, but just like the philosophy of what can you pour from an empty cup. So like come back to those elements of self-love, dedicate some time for you, dedicate some time to like truly tap into your existence, your emotions, your thoughts, your experiences, and truly like analyze them, experience them, immerse into them, so you are able to be more effective for the collective, but not just for the collective, more imperatively, more effective for you, you know, at the end of the day. And that's where the key is, man. Like how you said, self-love has truly evolved into like a trend, and I'm loving it now, man. I'm loving how it's evolved into a trend.
Yeah. How have things, you had mentioned a little bit earlier with, the kind of the way you grew up culturally. How has that played its role, whether positively or negatively, in the evolution of Cosmic Byron?
What it's done is neutrally, it has begun to eliminate and shed off people, places, and things that needed to be shed in order to cultivate and create space for me to actually magnetize and attract those elements, people, places, and things that I am being pulled towards. Because at first it was more like, here I am, this magnetized element, but I have all these polarized magnets around me repelling elements that are at the core that I know I need to tap into. But the moment that I've removed those polarized magnets, I begin to pull in and magnetize exactly what needed to come. So again, like I lost best friends, I lost like just all type of different experiences came along to where I knew it was for the best in that moment. Yeah, it was sad, like, but I trust the universe to provide and cultivate exactly what needs to be like brought into my space at any given divine time. But that was the biggest part. Like if I say a negative was losing a select group of best friends who weren't necessarily in alignment with this new trajectory in which I'm going on. Like again, like distance doesn't equate to beef. Still love them, still my brothers. But like the reduced amount of time in which we communicate is nowhere compared to like what we used to do. So like now it's just like it's focused on progression. Not perfection, but definitely progression.
Talk to me about I am she.
I wrote that for my queen, man. I wrote that for my daughter. It's I'm big into like existential psychology. So the idea that we definitely aren't going to be around in the physical form forever. So I won't possibly be able to communicate vocally to her. I wrote an element to where a dose of self-love was like the pregame for her on developing a sense of love. She is more so towards for her in her high school, college days, for her to develop like that sense of confidence, that sense of, you know what, I am she. I don't need external validation. Love, empathy, compassion, understanding, like those elements, those were like placed in poetry form. It's basically like poetry fused with psychology. So I mix it to pour them into that book. And now that's a book that when she is of age, for her to start processing and like getting my perspective of what self-love is, what evolving into like the divine feminine is from my observation of studying and observing other divine women. Sure. But like, don't necessarily copy and paste this onto you. They're just elements. Pull from what aligns with you, what resonates with you, toss away whatever doesn't, create the you. So within those quotes, I made sure that I put those elements. Like, there's no copy and paste. There's no, I see this is exactly what I want to do because they're doing it. Like, find the elements within you and trust those elements.
Yeah, that leaning into yourself and that trust is such a hard space to navigate, and something similar that I've wanted to implement and I'm going to this year was, so my daughter will be turning 6 in just a couple of weeks, and I thought about this maybe about 2 years ago, and I never did. It was writing a letter to her for her birthday, every year of her life, and then hopefully one day give it to her when she's ready, later on in life.
Big ball of tears right there, man.
Or have her discover it,
Right.
And then just, the envelope with the year on it and writing a letter to her. And I wish I would have done it from the age of 1, but here we are 6, and I'll roll it out this year for sure. But I think it's so important to communicate to the different phases of your child, because I don't think that, like, there's no one that's going to see them, I can't say it's for every parent, but I can speak for myself. But I know there's no one that's going to see them the way I see them, and have seen them and grow and develop and put on all the masks and the facades, right. For the cultural or for, friends or whatever it is.
Even for the parents,
Yeah, even for me, right? It's funny because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and my daughter loves Star Wars. But does she love Star Wars, or does she love Star Wars because Dad loves Star Wars?
Right. And that's how I see the Mandalorian helmet back there. So like, we've been watching it like crazy, but I'm mad that the show, I guess that episode ended, but she was heavy on it with me. But again, like you said, was it because I was heavy into it? Like, we do the whole thing, popcorn, pick up the 8-inch woofers, the speakers and everything, man.
Sure.
Turn it into a thing.
Yeah.
But again, like influence.
Yeah, my our Saturday morning ritual routine was like Sunday morning, was a big bowl of cereal and Star Wars Rebels. Like, we like old school, sit crisscross applesauce with like a bowl of cereal on the floor and just, zone out into some Star Wars Rebels. But it goes into the point of like, even through that, right, past her loving Star Wars, and if she carries that with her throughout life, awesome. And if she doesn't, that's fine too. But knowing, the essence behind that,
right.
and not feeling that I need to add this label to her of like, I love Star Wars, just for whatever reason, but knowing who she is and having that communication to her at those different phases of life, I think are huge. So, I mean, kudos to you for writing that, man. That's beautiful.
She cracks me up because we're watching the episode one day, and I'm like, this is bigger than just us watching a movie. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, this is quality time. And immediately her response is, not right now, Dad. It's just like, no, man, I want to talk to you. But I respected it. Like, give her that space, because it's one of those to where, like, I don't want to, like, overly push. And it's dope that she's able to recognize, like, when I'm going into, like, a tangent, or, like, when I'm going into, like, in depth, But most of the other times, I know she's not fully comprehending, like, the vocalization of it. Yeah. But the energy, I know that she's receiving energy emittance from our exchanges. So like, just see her like fully attentive at some moments, just like those little beady eyes just staring at me, like it's heaven, man. It's heaven on earth, man.
Yeah, 2 things that come up for me, my experience with her is, we would do gratitude at the end of the night. And we'd say, my wife, myself, my wife, and my daughter would just say 3 things we're grateful for, right? And what started with like ice cream and Barbie dolls and stuff like that, slowly shifted, maybe due to our influence of saying what we're grateful for that wasn't tangible, but obviously the family and food and health and wellness. It slowly shifted to those things for her, right? It started with like, I'm grateful for my toys and my dolls and blah, blah, blah. And now it's, I'm grateful for our health, or I'm grateful for my brother, I'm grateful for dinner tonight. That's one. And the other is, we do like a relaxing unwinding process, where we go through like, different parts of her body and just relax everything. And I would say like, relax your third eye. And she's like, third eye, right? So then
I was in here right now, so I can be like, Queen, where's your third eye? She taps right here, man. It's so cute. So
yeah. And then she'll like, we don't have a third eye. And I explained to her, I was like, to the best of my ability. And one day she said something at school. She was at preschool time. She's like, oh, we have a third eye. I'm like, okay.
I can only imagine the teacher, man, and all the other students like, what is going on here? What are they teaching her?
Listen, but again, it's that letter to her that one day, and she might lose that, right? She most likely will at some point, when after the age of 7, like we said earlier, that theta brainwave state of pure imagination goes away. Conscious imagination goes away, and we get influenced by external sources. And hopefully one day she'll get back to that, whether it be through the letters or through podcasts that I've done, or through just knowing that she has a third eye. But it's the same thing, right? It's knowing them in their essence.
That's what I love the most about like these digital footprints, these digital imprints, is the fact that they will possibly be able to archive and like tap into our archive and like watch what we've like been discussing, or even like, God forbid, she doesn't go like on my Facebook and see like the Byron or the Big B or the Deshaun, like even like when Facebook pulls up like the memories and you're able to see like what the hell those posts were like, it's like, whoa, who was that? And like just imagine like your child being able to like from a timeline essence, like be able to like review all that stuff, man, and like have access to it. That's pretty cool.
And see your own growth, right? And see your growth. And then again, it goes back to our previous point of recognizing yourself and others, and having those similar, tangible humanistic experiences that, translate through time, right? So tales old as time, right? It's just the hero's journey and just the experiences.
And it's not a rush. Like, don't think that you have to jump from A all the way to Z. Like, take your time, experience it. Like there are going to be hiccups, there are going to be hurdles. Just experience them. Whatever comes, allow it to come. Whatever goes, allow it to go. Like just experience.
Yeah, and don't rest on the successes either.
Definitely.
And don't get tripped up by the failures. Again, something that came for me in the tank was just staircases and landings, and you climb these staircases and they're different lengths and widths, and you hit a landing, and that's a beautiful place to be. And you get to reflect back on the staircase you climb, but you also have to look at that staircase ahead of you and take that first step, and then sometimes you're midway and you just got to scratch and claw your way up and just go back to what and try to stay on the inertia wave as long as possible.
Agree.
Awesome. Byron, thank you so much, man. This was, I can keep on going. I mean,
and seriously, thank you. I put it like this, man. Once I get finalized and it's time for me to implement mine, I got to bring you on, bro.
I'd love to. That'd be great. And of course, come to the pod shed once you move up to Jersey. And where can people connect with you and get all your services? And
so my main platform, Instagram. So at CosmicByron.com. Well, at Cosmic Byron, my website is cosmicbyron.com. You can check me out on there. I'm rolling out different blogs. The Shift Academy is coming currently. My 3 books are on there. Gonna roll that out to include the Shift Mindfulness Journal. It's gonna be the full format book Shift. Infinite Being is coming. Twitter at Cosmic Byron. Snapchat Cosmic Byron. So yeah, hit me up. Check me out. Let's follow.
Byron, thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure getting to rap with you a little bit. It's always fun when you can go down like deep rabbit holes with people and just and again get to connect with someone on something outside of a water cooler conversation. So I really appreciate your time, man. Much love.
So grateful. So honored. Thank you, King.